What embarrassing phase did you go through as a teenager? The misunderstood writer phase. I wrote daily blogs on MySpace that were basically just cryptic, stream of conscious drivel. My friends ate the shit up, and I was so full of myself. In my early 20s, when I started dating a girl that did not know me from those years, I went and deleted all the posts because I knew she had eventually find my MySpace page. Part of me wanted to preserve it to look back at, but I was afraid that she would not get it, nuked it all. Thank God I did. I am glad I scrubbed that shit when I did. Nowadays I bet it'd be way more difficult to truly delete it all. At the time I considered my writing to be avant-garde, but now in my 30s I have realized that artists often label things as avant-garde, when they really mean to say it is bad. As a preteen, I was too big for the clothes in the boys' department and too small for the men's department, so I wore parachute pants every day. I suppose I could have worn sweats or whatever else, but I went with parachute pants. A few years later, when gangsta rap was getting all the media attention, I got big into West Coast rap. Snoop, Dre, Tupac, Warren G. I was a pasta-ass white kid from New England and I apparently thought the housing development I lived in was the projects. After Tupac and Biggie got killed, the media stopped paying attention and I moved on. Stalinism. I am serious. Even got a teacher yelling at me once. However, my excuse is it is because I am Russian, though I live in a EU country, and it is very typical for people to believe that Stalin did nothing wrong and the only reason why Westerners are criticizing him and making up atrocities which are not made up, of course, is because Stalin industrialized Russia and established a public education system. While Westerners would love to see Russians uneducated, illiterate peasants and without any industry, my views were so anti-historical and anti-reality in retrospect. I took a college history class purely about Stalin, and by God, he was one hell of a man, truly the epitome of calculating, at times brilliant, and completely and utterly delusional. I always knew he was bad. I watched enough World War II and Cold War documentaries as a kid to know that, but this class opened my eyes to the sheer depth and depravity of his madness. He industrialized an agrarian society in under a decade. He dragged Russia up from the mud to be a political and sort of economic, at least in the beginning, powerhouse, and the enormousness of that achievement is mind-boggling. I can understand why people less familiar about how bad the Soviet Union was would idolize that in a way, but that victory came at the cost of millions upon millions of lives, and such levels of suffering that his reign cannot be understood in any other way than as a crime against humanity. And you want to know the most ducked up part? Prisoners in the gulags, prisoners whom the majority were completely innocent, wept upon the news of his death. People wept for their murderous and insane dictator. People cried tears of agony at the death of the man who had killed so many of their friends and family. That level of social engineering is unprecedented. It is shocking to read about this and to know that it is not even fictional. It sounds like something out of an Orwell novel, and yet, it is entirely truthful. There is this really weird sort of neo-Soviet revival that I see going on even over here in the Midwestern US, and it is deeply concerning. Soviet flags are actually a fairly common occurrence. I have seen more than a couple of them on my campus. That in and of itself is not too bad, but I have seen people genuinely start to say that, well, maybe Stalin was not so bad. And I tell you what, nothing makes me want to throw hands with someone more than that. Christ, I could write a novel-length rant on this, but the TLDR of it would be Stalin was evil. The Soviet Union was a terrible place to live. Stop ducking romanticizing it, you dumb twats. It is not like some young adult fiction book. Actual people were tortured and murdered. Actual families were torn apart for no good reason. Stalin was not a good dude. Yes, his reign of terror, rightfully called that, mind you, included some good things like social programs, but it was at such great a cost that sympathizing with him in any way is basically grounds, in my book, for a no-holds-barred bitch slap. Man, so many things during my pop-punk too cool to care, love ducking with people phase. My friends and I would make movies all the time, and I did come to school or football games in costume. I did do really minor things to duck with people that at the time were hilarious and now I know were just irritating. Proselytized being straight edge, my anti-Bush political views, atheism, etc. Desperate romantic in my mind, clearly nice guy dickhead in retrospect. So many things I did make me cringe. I stand by my love of punk and making movies, but most of the rest was just terrible. Also along the way decided because I was so punk, that all rap was terrible and they were universally untalented. Still not a huge hip-hop guy with some notable exceptions, but what an idiotic thing to decide universally the whole genre is worthless and I am smarter than any fan. I could seriously go on forever. A lot of influence from Jackass and Metalocalypse. Me and my friends in freshman-sophomore year were big into the Seattle music scene and started a band. We would all pile into Buddy's Fox body Mustang that barely ran and never had gas and go to Guitar Center and be the guy that turned shit up to 11 and did one-off sweep-picking nonsense or drum solos. We were all broke, so we would go play in Mustang Guy's bedroom where he had a bass drum with 2 kick pedals, a snare drum, and a crash cymbal. My guitar was a $100 Behringer Stratocaster knockoff and our bass player had an acoustic bass with his dad's piezoelectric pickup duct taped to the acoustic hole. We would then all get baked and put on face paint and skateboard to 7-Eleven to buy hot Cheetos and Monster energy drinks. It doesn't sound that bad, but I remember a lot of embarrassing highlights, like on the dark bus I broke a glow stick on purpose and smeared it all over my face, and then my eyes stung and I kept them closed for the whole bus ride, and when we were getting off I walked into the bus stop pole and fell on my ass. Or my buddy who played bass, his first girlfriend was like 600 pounds, not exaggerating, and wore mini skirts, and we all would skateboard at our high school skate park, and this one time she fell into the bowl and we had to have a teacher come out who was like, "What do you want me to do about this?" and called the fire department. 2 fire trucks, the kind where they use Chevy Silverados or whatever, 6 buff firefighters and a harness and rope later. We got her out. Mustang Guy had to borrow his dad's minivan at the time to pick her up and take her home, which was a huge ask when we were all like 16 or 17 and he only had a basic still learning driver's license. I went through a Christian evangelical fundamentalist modest high woman should submit to her husband phase. Strange. Since I was raised as a fairly liberal Catholic, I was obsessed with what I deemed go-be modest clothing, that is, no cleavage or tight-fitting shirts, no shorts or skirts higher than the knee, etc., and prayed for my future husband every night. It all started when I read this book by Debbie Pearl called Preparing to be a Helpmeet. Really ducked with my head for a while, since it convinced me that all my self-worth was determined by a man. Now I am a feminist and an atheist, and I cringe every time I think about this phase of my life, which essentially lasted from the age of 18 to 19. I hate myself for it, lol. I wanted to wear trips with the loops and chains hanging from them, but they were 60 and I was a poor kid. Settled for black jeans and black tees. Had a massive growth spurt right after I got my first pair of baggy black jeans, which rendered them too short. I still insisted on wearing them even though you could see my striped, mismatched toe socks under the hem whether I was sitting or standing. Also, after said growth spurt, my chest area expanded from an A cup to a C cup. None of my junior-sized rock band tees fit me right, they came up too high. Not even an I am trying to be edgy and sexy too high, just an awkwardly above the waistband too high. Thank God I covered all that uncoolness with a healthy marching band obsession, otherwise I would have never fit an S. Lying, to a horrible, ridiculous, outrageous degree. Boo-hoo. Sob story. I grew up believing no one would ever like me if they knew who I thought I was, so I unconsciously developed the habit of making up an exciting life story for myself. In my lies I was super intelligent, programmed computers back when hardly anyone had ever touched one, wrote music, had tremendous relationship experience, had been through every hard time imaginable, etc. And the thing is, I was apparently really good at it, because I actually became one of the more popular guys in my school, even though I was the nerdy, poorly dressed, poetry writing, honor roll, angst-filled kid from the wrong side of the tracks. This charade went on all the way through my first year of college, when my best friend staged an intervention where he confronted me with irrefutable, absolute proof of several lies I had told him, and then told me he still loved me like a brother. I had come to rely on my made-up life so much that it shattered my sense of identity to have to give it up. I cut off ties with nearly all my friends for years. Finally I started contacting them, one by one, to apologize for my lies. Nearly all of them were incredibly forgiving and supportive. Many said that they had sensed that there was something lost in me, but few had actually known I was lying so much. It actually rekindled a few old friendships, and of course, a few hated me for it, which I knew and admitted that I very much deserved. When Facebook came around, I had to go through the same confessional process again with dozens of people who remembered me from high school but whom I had not ever been able to contact. Many people said, "Geez, we all lied in high school," but I assured them that as much as I truly did care about my friends, no one in high school ever met the real me. So boo-hoo. Sob story. I am 52 now, and to this day I still very often feel like a fake, and that no one will like me if they know the real me. Not a day goes by when I do not cringe at the memory of some ridiculous lie I told to someone I cared about. I am bothering to type all of this because I figure that if there is one person who has trapped themselves in the same web that I did, and they read this and realize that most of their friends will still love the real them, then maybe the stupidity of my teenage years can amount to one good thing in this world. I just did not know how to dress. All of my clothes were from my brothers, who were 8 and 10 years older than me, and both shorter than me. I wore nothing but drug rugs and corduroy pants all through high school and into my college years. I have weird shoes, and they're old skater cloths that were big on them but were a little small on me. And to top it all off, I had a huge, blonde afro. My hair is naturally very curly, and I had my hair grow down to my shoulders at one point, except after I showered, it never stayed straight and would eventually curl up and sit on top of my head. I did not even have to do anything to it, and it would form into a tight curled afro by the time first period was over. I finally made some friends in college who took me clothes shopping and made me try things on. I found some clothes that fit nice and I actually felt good wearing them, but those were some painful years in high school. I was insanely religious, like true love Waits level religious. I had a purity ring, I prayed constantly, I read the Bible way too much. I was uncomfortable by anyone doing anything unchristian. Atheists legitimately scared me. I judged anyone who had premarital sex and some people who had sex within marriage. And I tried at-home conversion therapy because I was so adamant against accepting that I was queer. I know now that a lot of it had to do with my OCD and my obsession with being pure. I could write pages and pages of this, and one day I might, but this was one of the most embarrassing and traumatic phases of my life. And it took place between 12-16. I was that person who tried to ride the emo scene wave, but I thought it was insulting to be labeled as such on some occasions. So I guess I was either a poser or an emo scene kid in denial, or the metaphorical closet, since I did not completely show it outwardly with my style or anything. I do know that I was that angsty, cryptic writer who had write the most pretentious poetry and whiny ramblings. You could also bet your ass that I was also that teen who in the MySpace day, I made sure my theme and playlist reflected that, if you all remember that playlist.com site. Oh, and I was also here for vampire freaks and really anything to do with RP involving the online vampire werewolf fandom community via chat rooms or games like Vampires: The Dark Alleyway. Most of my poetry was on my VF blog, but after the site upgraded to 2.0 or 3.0, everyone's blog posts older than 6 months got wiped clean. So many years of work and script concepts were gone. I was almost a #nice guy in middle school and a good bit of high school. I did not berate girls when they rejected me. I did not hate them or resent them, and I was not just trying to get with them to get laid. At most, I would stop talking to them because I did not want things to be awkward. I was a hopeless romantic who was more on the hopeless side of things. It was like I was a neckbeard without as much entitlement or rage, who could actually talk to girls, and who was not in bad shape. I did, however, think that being nice to them and being there for them would end up with them wanting to date me. When that would not work out, I would get pretty upset. I was also the type to write love letters way too early in the relationship. Some girls loved it, some did not. I kept trying with each new one anyways. I did have pretty decent success dating in high school and I definitely grew a lot from each one, but it took me until late my senior year to really understand that stuff is cringy. I also wore Hawaiian shirts and cargo shorts a lot. I still stand by the cargo shorts decision, but the Hawaiian shirts are best saved for beaches or cruises. Oh my god, I was bullied and had a shit family life, so how did I cope? I became full emo, hair over my eyes, wearing all black, daydreaming, looking out the window, trying to look mysterious as Duck. Took a book with me to school so I could be a special snowflake and read it instead of playing outside like everyone else. I was also religious and always thought I was an angel from God, but when I reached puberty I became Satan's daughter instead and knew that someday my powers would awaken. When a guy approached me and tried to bully me, I told him to leave me alone because I am a witch and I could curse him. Yeah, sometimes these memories do not let me sleep at night. Oh, and do not get me started on my weird anime obsession. Oh, offers cupcakes. Roar XD. I still like anime, but thankfully, I am not talking like this anymore. When we were teenagers, my friends and I decided we wanted to be filmmakers, and so on weekends we would dress up in trench coats. Matrix Reloaded aesthetic overtook the 2000s and fight each other with shitty fake swords. Film it on a mini DV camera, and then edit the scene in something like Pinnacle Studio. I cannot for the life of me sit through and watch any of these, and whenever they get mentioned or sometimes even posted in Facebook group chat I cringe absolutely. During that time some of us, not me, wore that style out and about. Ugh. However, there is a silver lining to the whole thing. As we tried to eventually get into the film industry, one of my friends from the group actually managed it. One of his recent jobs was on the crew of the upcoming Dumbo remake. Well, 6th through 9th grade I was an asshole to everyone, even my friends. That slowly changed to self-deprecating humor. I had a super abrasive personality and thought I was the shit even though I had no real skills, awards, admirable traits, talents, or anything. I also dressed in neon colors every day, usually would not even match. I am talking bright blue basketball shoes, bright orange Nike Elite socks, bright green basketball shorts, bright red shirt from some athletics company. I never played a sport besides one season of wrestling in Ms. that I didn't even want to do. 9th and 10th grade I was super self-conscious about myself, and rather than trying to improve myself I just stopped caring. I started practically rolling out of bed out the door. I would dress into pajamas, throw some sneakers on with any 2 socks, and a baggy hoodie and walk out the door. My hair would stick up like crazy. It looked like a sea urchin. Previously I would have shaved my head down really short, but stopped caring enough to do that too. So eventually I caved and would just gel it down like crazy. So now I looked like Pee Wee Herman. Still looked depressed as Duck, but also like Pee Wee Herman. I would fall asleep in class, never do any school work, and would be proud of it. I wore how little ducks I gave as a badge to be admired. Honestly, might have been depressed, might still be depressed. Those years kind of sucked. Would not have gotten checked out then, still probably won't get checked out now. I spent a significant amount of time in my early and mid-teens trying to convince everyone I was from the future and had a multi-agent virus that could crash the internet, which of course was connected to my computer via a red button. I would skip lessons in order to hole myself up in some of the rooms to draw blueprints of technology from the future, including airships and interplanetary communication networks. Most of the design principles behind the stuff has become my basis for my science fiction writings. These were, among other things, at the time I had not really settled my emotional self-control, so I was quite chinobu, so to speak, no small part in thanks to my autism. More emotional incidents included chasing someone with a keyboard, the musical kind, and also spending the day pretending to be a chicken or a snail. I was a weird kid. This lasted until I was about 16. Hit like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing to our channel.